Hello and welcome to part 3 of our tropical terrain series. This is David Ward, and in this section we're going to go ahead and add a couple of more items to our foliage library here. First one going to be some grass. So we're going to go ahead and use the sapling generator yet again. So let's go ahead and go back to our user preferences and add-ons and sapling. Again, if you've closed Blender since part 2 and reopened it, or even just closed your scene and opened a new one, you'll have to turn this add-on back on. So there we go. Okay, let's make sure all the current plants and everything are in this layer here. So we need to add the normal tree over there, so just hit M and then click on there. Okay, now we have an empty layer here to start working with. Okay, so Shift A, we're going to go ahead and add the old curve again, add tree, as you know, and put it in there really tall. But like I said, we're gonna use this to create some grass. It's not gonna just be like stalks of grass that you'd see in someone's yard. It's gonna be like a well, I call them creepers. You know, the kind of grass that grows up beside your sidewalk and kind of just creeps out over this concrete and everything. So we're gonna create something like that. Okay, so we're going to have to do a lot of custom settings here. Let's set the scale all the way down to 0. Okay, we're going to zoom in. And I think that's pretty well it here. Maybe we'll, of course, give it some bevel there so we can see what we're doing. And let's set the radius scale to 0.25, make it real small. And then I think that's pretty much all we need to do in the geometry setting. Let's go to the branch splitting. And base size, we're going to set that really small. Zoom in here, you can't really see the little branches coming off there too well. So let's set that really small so they're coming almost right off of the bottom. Let's make it 0.01 there. Okay. Now, this could take a little bit of trial and error, but we're going to set the branches here. Let's just make that real small. Let's make that 10. And then probably the third layer of branches, we'll make that, let's make that 15. And then of course we need to give it 3 levels. Okay, and now we need to go to the branch growth. And what we're going to do, in order to make that creep out along the ground more, we need to make this very first layer or level really short. Right now it's a length of 1. So if we make that about let's try 0.2. You see it makes it really short. But now we can go in on the length of the other guys and make those really stand out. So let's make that let's make it 5. And then the length of the third level layer, I don't know. We'll make that 1. There we go. And actually, yeah, let's make that 0.5. And tell you what, let me go back to the geometry and make that a little bit thicker just so we can see it a little bit better right now. So let's set the radius scale. Let's go ahead and put that back to 1 just so we can see it. Okay, now back to branch growth. I'm going to go ahead and make that first level a little smaller still, maybe about 0.1. Okay, and then we need to mess with the curvature because we don't want them growing up. We want them growing out. So right here under the -40, zoom in here a little bit. Let's start increasing that so they flatten out a little bit, and then change the variation. Let's make that a lot smaller so they don't. Excuse me. So they don't. Well, set that to 0, I guess. And then make this a little bit smaller as well, or higher, I guess, since it's a negative number. We're going up. Let's go ahead and set that to 0. And then increase this just a little bit. Okay, and we need to go to the branch splitting now, and we can mess with the angles there as well. So we can decrease that, increase this, and as you can see, it's starting to. I can get the camera or the view located on it. Starting to spread out a little bit better. I can get a good angle. There. Okay. So let's get a little bit more downward angle. Oops. Sometimes my mouse grabs that and goes crazy when I move it too far. Okay, so we'll just spread that out along the ground. Let me go ahead and make it a little thicker because I was having difficulty seeing it, and I'm sure you guys are too, looking at the small video screen. So let's make it a little thicker there. Let's go ahead and set it to 2 so we can see it. There we go. Okay, and I think that's probably okay, pretty well set on the most of the settings. Let me tweak it just a little bit. Let's go to the branch growth and set the length variation to go a little bit higher. This side view. Okay, we can see it's kind of spreading out there. Maybe we'll make that length of the original one even shorter just so it's more flat against the ground. And then maybe change some of the curvature. Okay, tell you what, let's go ahead and add some leaves to it, which are actually going to be our grass sprouts or whatever. Go ahead and show that. And they're going to be obviously way too big. So let's set the leaf X scale. Just bring this out here. You can see that leaf scale X. Let's make that 0.1. It's 0.1, probably be good. And that looks pretty decent. Looks like a little scrub of grass, right? And let's make it a little taller. And then we'll make it a little more narrow. Make it 0.05. And then let's make it 0.2. Okay. So now, if we look at our top view, you can see it's starting to look like some little scrub of grass. Now that we can see it a little better, let's go back to our branch splitting and give it a few more segments here so we can get it to spread out a little bit more. Maybe a few more in here. And let's give it some angle variation. Maybe some angle. These split angles don't seem to do anything. Rotate angle. Here we go. This will probably... Yeah. So let's just rotate them around so we get a little bit better distribution. Let's give it some variation there. And then we can go up and back to the geometry. Well, I would say we can. Random seed, that might kind of mess up our hard work here. No. We can go through there and maybe find something that's a little more suitable to what we're going for. Since it's so small, some of these random seeds are just going to, they're going to scale everything down to 0. So just click through there until you find something that looks pretty decent. That almost looks good. It's a little bit too big, though, I think. So let's keep going. It's kind of all piled on top of each other. You know what? I'm just going to stick with the original, the one that we created by ourselves. Okay. And one more thing, branch splitting. Let's give it a few more branches there. Trying to get it to spread out a little bit more. Just go ahead and start from 0 on both of these. There we go. I think that'll work. I think that'll work for our grass. So you can keep going with it if you like, and just kind of play with it and get some different looking stuff there. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to call that grass done. So now we'll go ahead and do like we did on the trees. Go ahead and select, well, similar to what we did on the trees, but since this is just purely plant, there's no wood involved. We're just going to give it, instead of giving it 2 different materials first, we're going to go ahead and just, I would like to keep the stalks separate from the blades of grass. So what I'm going to do, instead of giving it 2 materials, I'm just going to go ahead and give it, well, I got to convert that to a mesh first, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a vertex group, and we'll call this one stalks, I guess. And then we're going to grab the blades of grass, shift select the stalks, and Control J, join them together. Okay, and now we'll tab into edit mode, deselect everything, and then, well, actually select everything, and then deselect our stalks vertex group. Deselect, okay. And then we're going to add another one and call that one blades, stalks, blades of grass. So we'll go ahead and assign those. Okay, so now we can select, go into edit mode, deselect everything. Select the stalks. Oh, we never did assign those. Uh-oh. Undo a couple of times. Tab out, undo. Until we get them separate. There we go. Assign there. Okay, so now Control J. Select everything. Vertex groups. Deselect. There we go. Now you can see a difference. And we're going to assign this new one. Blades. Oops. Assign. And then deselect. Select the stalks. Good. Deselect. Select the blades. Good. Deselect. All right. So now our grass is good to go. Let's go ahead and give it the greenery material now. And there we go. Go ahead and turn on the layer with everything else. And let's just duplicate this a couple of times across here, so across there, so we can get a better idea of what it's going to look like when it renders. Maybe give it some rotation, vary it up a little bit. So I'll go ahead and render this out, and go ahead and pause recording so you don't gotta wait for it to render. So be right back. Okay, and now we have some grass, little scrubs of grass on there. So that looks pretty good, I think. There's another. You can also use the particle hair generator to create grass, but if you're wanting to put on the atmospheric perspective to where it kind of the actual mist settings is what Blender calls it, but where it fades into the background the further away it gets due to like the moisture in the air and things like that. The particle hair doesn't play well with the mist settings, but if you use geometry like we're doing here, it will work fine. So let's keep moving. Let's go ahead and grab those two. Well, we'll go ahead and leave them there for now. Let's select all those grass plots there and move them to the layer there. Okay, and back to the original layer. We're going to create one more type of plant, but we're pretty well done with the sapling generator, so don't got to worry about that anymore. But what we're going to do now is create kind of just like a tropical fern type of thing. So I'm going to Shift A, create a plane. Okay, just tab into edit mode, W subdivide, and just the one time will be fine. And we're going to go ahead and get rid of this side. We'll go ahead and tab out and go to our modifiers and add a mirror. Okay, go ahead and turn on clipping. And now we're going to start sculpting this to look the way we want. It's going to be kind of the palm frond type of thing. So we'll get that, and then let's turn off clipping real quick. Actually, I should have got that guy before I cut it in half, but just duplicate the vertices there over here, and then we're going to Shift D, duplicate those again, drag them along the x-axis, and then we're going to SX -1, scale them, basically mirror them, and let's drag it to line up perfectly with those guys there. And then we're going to select all these down the middle, and I'm going to go W, remove doubles, and I guess they're not quite close enough to remove. They have to be really sitting on top of each other. So let me select that group there and move it to where they're exactly lined up. And there we go. You can see it removed 3 vertices, and it welded them together essentially. So, okay, so we got that extra piece there. It's Control L to select all the linked vertices there, and let's move it over here. Start lining it up. Maybe make it a little smaller. Okay, let's do another one here. Make it a little smaller. Okay, and I'm not sure how many little fingers they have coming off of there, but we're just going to do it with the 5 here. So let's go ahead and grab these vertices and start kind of sewing this together. Okay. And there we go. Okay, now let's add Control R, add a loop right in here. And then we'll grab this section down here, put our 3D cursor right there in the middle, and then hit the period button so we're rotating and scaling around the 3D cursor right there. So when we scale, it'll go towards the middle. And let's go ahead and turn on proportional editing, connected. Scale this down. Maybe start, oops, go ahead and turn clipping back on over there. Start rotating that out. And let's grab this section here. Okay, so now let's give it a little bit of better shape there. Let's make this a little taller. Okay, so let's grab all these center edges there, and let's deselect these here. And let's go to our top view. Actually, I guess we're in top view. Let's go to our rear view, Control 1. Come down here, and then we're gonna pull those down to where they give it a ridged shape, like so. Okay, so that's looking pretty decent. Let's grab this loop there, and we're going to start creating a stem. So we'll just extrude that out a little bit, scale it down. Okay, extrude out and scale it down. We'll scale it on the x-axis this time. Okay, and now we need to curve it around like so. Maybe drag it down a little bit. And let's go ahead and curve our frond, our leaf, up here some. Like so. You can see. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a smooth setting so it's not so jaggedy looking. Now, when I Shift-D'd, when I duplicated that side of that frond, it also flipped the normals for that. So that's why you're seeing some of that weird black color there. So the way to fix that, just go into edit mode, select everything, Control N, and it'll recalculate them and set them up correctly. Okay, so that's pretty well it on the leaf there. Let's go ahead and apply our mirror. And actually, let's tab into edit mode, and let's drag it to where the stem is around our origin of the, actually that's going to be up there. That orange dot there is the origin of the mesh here. So let's drag that up there. Okay. And let's go Control comma so we're not rotating around the 3D cursor anymore. And let's scale these together to where they're pretty well surrounding the origin spot there. And maybe grab this guy, scale that a little more narrow. Okay, and if you like, you can go ahead and add a subdivision surface modifier to it. Let's go ahead and give it a subdivision of 1 on both view and render. That'll save time later when we go to render it. It won't take quite as long. Okay, now let's add an empty. Okay, actually, let's grab our plant here and let's make it situated a little closer to where the bottom of the stem is there on the origin there. Okay, and let's go Shift S, cursor to selected, so it puts a 3D cursor right there on the origin of our frond there. And now we'll grab that new empty that we made and Shift S, selection to cursor, so it puts that pretty well lined up with the base of the leaf. And one other thing I want to do before I go any further, let's tab into edit mode and select everything that's not part of the stem area. Go to our front view and let's just rotate it slightly, just so it's a little offset. Okay, now let's do one more thing, Shift A, and we're going to add a Bezier curve right there. And we'll tab into edit mode of that. And you can see that it has little arrows pointing, and that means that's the direction the curve is going. So you want the beginning of it, the base of it, right here. Let's Shift S and selection to cursor there, so the bottom of this curve is lined up with the bottom of the origin of the leaf, because we're going to have the leaf, and we're going to use an array to add more leaves to this little plant. They're going to follow the curve of this. They're going to follow the path of this Bezier curve there. So, okay, now grab the leaf, go to add a modifier. It's going to be an array. Okay, you can see it adds another one there, but we don't want that. We'll just go ahead and delete the 1 right there, and we don't really need relative offset because we're going to go object offset, and we're going to use that empty that we added. So it's right there, empty. So now, if we rotate around, move the empty, you can see that it controls the duplicates that the array is creating. Right now it's only got 2, so if we add some more, you can see that it controls all of them. So if we move it up a little bit, so rotate it around and move it up, it starts kind of blossoming out essentially the plant there. And if we scale it down, the further it goes up, the smaller they start getting. So that's what we're going to do there. And then instead of having a set number, a set count there, fixed count, we're going to use fit curve. And then we're going to use the Bezier curve that we just created. You can see that it automatically applies however many fronds or leaves that it needs to reach the tip of the curve there. Now, one more thing we're going to do so that it matches the actual direction that the curve is going. So we're going to add a curve, deform right there, deform curve. It's going to collapse some of these guys. And it's going to be the Bezier curve. And we want to use the Z deformation axis. So now, anytime we go in here and edit our curve, the plant is going to follow along. So if we say we want to make it really tall and kind of curve out like so, you can see. Now, the empty down here is essentially, it's not controlling how many leaves are there. It's just controlling basically their size and their rotation around the center stem. So if you look at it right now, you can kind of see a spiral shape sort of coming into play there. So let's rotate that a little bit differently so that it's not so obvious that it's just repeated like that. So there we go. Okay, now I don't want this plant to be quite this tall, so I'm going to grab that curve and let's make it a little shorter. Okay, so I think that's going to work. Now, one issue that you might see, if you look closely, you can see that these leaves aren't really attached to anything. They're kind of just floating out in space. So we're going to kind of use this, we're going to, what's the word I'm looking for? We're going to implement this curve to have two different functions. So right now it's controlling the curve and the length, or excuse me, the curve and the height of our plant here. Let's also make it the center stem, the center stalk. So let's go to our curve settings there. And under fill, we'll go ahead and turn that to full. And then under bevel depth, let's go ahead and click that up a little bit. So it takes on some thickness there. About like so. And let's give it some extra resolution there. If we click in, let's give it 2. Okay. Now what I'd like to have is the very tip of it kind of taper off and get a lot shorter. But if I come in here and grab the tip and hit Alt-S, that's going to make, that'll fatten or skinny up our stalk there. It also makes the leaves around it a little smaller, which, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I'd like to have it pretty much taper all the way down to 0. If I do that, the leaves are really going to get small. So what I'm going to do is grab both ends of our curve, W. Actually, no, don't do that. Grab the very tip, and we're going to extrude out. We're going to hit E. It's going to extrude it out. Then we're going to S0 to scale it down so it doesn't have any handlebars coming off the Bezier curve. And then grab the top of the lower, or the second curve there. Actually, let's turn off proportional editing so we don't got to worry about that. Make sure we select everything in there. And there we go. Okay. And now we can grab this and Alt-S and make it as small as we want without affecting the size of the leaves. So there we go. Okay, so now let's grab our plant. And one thing that's kind of bugging me is the shape of the tips here. This is too rounded. They need to be a little sharper. So let's go to our modifiers here and let's turn off all these guys. And we'll tab into edit mode. And let's just add a loop at each tip there. And then maybe one more loop like that too. Now be careful, the more vertices you add to this, the longer it'll take to render depending on how many of these types of plants you add to your scene. Okay, so that's a little better. Now we can turn those back on. You can see it looks a little bit better. Okay, so our plant's pretty well done. Now, if you want to make a couple of different types, you just select everything here that we've created and just Shift D to duplicate it, and then you can edit that individually, and you'll essentially have two different plants. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that for now. But if you want to create a couple different plants, go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and basically collapse this plant so we've created it to look the way we want. Let's go ahead and apply this array. Okay, and then we're going to apply that curve as a controller. And we can go ahead and just delete the subsurf for now. We'll add it back here in a second. And let's select the main stem there and go Object. Since right now it's a curve, we have to convert it to a mesh. Okay, and now we'll grab the leaves, Shift select the stalk, and Control J, just like we did on the trees with the leaves and the branches. And now we'll give it the greenery material. And there we have a little tropical plant. So let's go ahead and turn on that other layer, look through our camera, and let's drag that over, maybe make it quite a bit smaller, rotate it, and Shift select it, or Shift D, duplicate it. Let's drag it over here and kind of rotate it around, give it some variation, and just move it into our scene so we can get a kind of a cool render going on. Maybe a little smaller. Okay, so we'll go ahead and render this. And I think that's going to do it for part 3. So let me let it render. I'll pause recording. Okay, and now we have our added objects here to our little growing library. We got our grass down here and our little tropical plant there. So that's, like I said, that's going to do it for part 3. We're building up our plant library, slow but sure. So next part 4, we'll get into probably start working on the actual ground, and we'll throw in some rocks, make maybe a small rock library as well, maybe some seashells or something like that. Just anyways, that's going to do it for part 3. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.